My name is Masa Takei, and I'm a freelance journalist. I used to be a corporate type, worked in management consulting, MBA background. Now I'm living in Haida Gwaii. I spent the last year living on North Beach of Haida Gwaii, building a cabin and living among the community of Toe Hill. The OffGrid project was building a rustic cabin that wasn't hooked up to the electrical grid or to the water main. I was a first-time builder, never nailed two pieces of wood together. I was worried about a lot of things, if I'd physically injure myself before I'd even started. I went from being an urbanite to someone who can appreciate some of the finer points of living off the grid and off the land. All I know is how much I don't know.
Born in Japan and raised in beautiful Vancouver, BC, Masa Takei is the ultimate businessman and urbanite. But new career paths led him to become a freelance travel writer, and upon taking his first trip to Haida Gwaii, he fell in love with it.
The place I'm headed to is called Haida Gwaii, formerly known as the Queen Charlotte Islands. They're the westernmost islands off of Canada. And it's a place I first visited about 4 years ago. It was my first magazine travel assignment. It's difficult to put into words what makes it so magical, but I think that's the word that usually comes up, magical.
Masa yearned for a change in his life, a real adventure. He came up with a plan to move to Haida Gwaii for a full year and live off the land, build his own cabin, hunt, and gather his own food. He documented his year-long adventure with weekly video diaries on RadX.
The OffGrid project is about unplugging, essentially, from modern life and stripping back to basics, reconnecting with the land, more or less reset, feel what it's like to build my own shelter and gather and grow my own food. For my particular project, I'm kind of stacking the cards in my favor because food is so plentiful there. When the tide goes out, they say the table is set. It's got something like more protein per square meter than just about anywhere else on the planet. So if I starve there, I'll starve anywhere, I guess. One thing I noticed a while back, and it's something that's been sort of growing inside of me, was the paradox between standard of living and quality of life. I think that we can live quite well with even less. I'm thinking of things like having good food to eat that you've grown or gathered yourself, clean air, clean water, good company, all things that don't require us to work as hard or earn as much money as we do here in the city. The reason I decided to do it now was it just seemed a perfect opportunity, and perhaps my last opportunity where I don't have any responsibilities. I'm single, I don't have a mortgage, no kids. A clear year like this is a rare thing, and so I'm going to jump on it. It's about 48 hours before I need to be on a ferry up to Haida Gwaii. And I don't know if you can see around me, but it's an explosion of crap. Pretty much everything you see needs to fit in the back of my Subaru station wagon, along with the stand-up paddleboard, a bike, and 200 pounds of nails.
Before he left for Haida Gwaii, Masa's friends weighed in on his upcoming adventure.
The response when I tell people what I'm doing, it certainly runs the full range. I'd say the majority really are envious. A lot of people are talking about visiting, which is good. And then at the other end of the spectrum, one of my best friends emailed me after I told him about this, and his suggestion was, why don't you try a year of acting your age? That's his sense of humor, I think.
So apparently, Masa, you're heading to Haida Gwaii to live in the forest with the forest creatures and a chainsaw.
Fortunately, you know nothing, so you're going to be forced to talk to the community. Otherwise, I think you'd become a hermit.
Killing things, eating them, from as I understand it. Or not, going to the store.
I don't know why he needs to go to Haida Gwaii to find out where he belongs, because it seems like he belongs quite naturally in the city.
I'm hoping you're not going to become grizzly man up in in the northwest.
You want to see your hair grow really long and bushy. I think that is going to go with the whole experience, and if you don't do that, I think you got to grow the beard. I think you really got to get back to that sort of natural look.
If I know you, I think that what you're going to be quite good at is meeting pretty interesting, crazy people.
What do I worry about you going up north? It's, you know it yourself, it's your analysis paralysis. I worry about you getting too into your own head.
But those will all be a part of that experience where in comes Masa like this, out comes Masa like that.
The journey up to Haida Gwaii takes 3 days. It starts with a ferry to Vancouver Island, followed by a 15-hour-long ferry ride on the Inside Passage to Prince Rupert, British Columbia.
Hi, welcome to the digs, or my digs, for the grueling Inside Passage portion of the voyage north. It'll do. A nice sight to wake up to. Just gets better and better.
A layover in Prince Rupert is needed before catching the third ferry to Skidegate on Haida Gwaii.
We just arrived in Haida Gwaii. The announcement's just going right now. But I couldn't help but taking advantage of this beautiful gleaming loom of steel and tile to take the last hot shower of my next foreseeable future.
From Skidegate Landing, it's a 100-kilometer drive north to Masa, towards the Toe Hill community and the cabin site.
Well, here we are, after about a year of planning, finally up on North Beach. I just arrived at Rich and Lisa's place, All the Beach You Can Eat. This behind me is the Queen Pin, the cabin I'll be boring or staying in until my own is built. And the building site's just about 50 meters up the hill there, amongst the trees. I don't know if you can hear it, but you can hear the pounding of surf in the distance there. Birds are chirping in the trees, the sky is blue, it's sunny, which is a nice way to arrive. Still a little bit surreal.
After more than a year of planning, Masa Takei is finally up on North Beach in Haida Gwaii. He came up with a plan to move to Haida Gwaii for a full year and live off the land. He will be staying in a rental cabin, the Queen Pin, while he gets to work building his very own rustic off-grid home. Masa reached an agreement with a local known as Rapid Richie and his wife Lisa to build on their land. He will be able to use the cabin he builds when it's not rented out to visitors on the island.
I was a first-time builder. I did build some IKEA furniture. That's about as close as I got to making anything. So today is day 3 on the island. The second day, yesterday, Rich got me going right off, clearing land. I was thinking that maybe we'd hang out a bit and I'd just get a feel for the area and the building site. No, none of that. He basically put a brush saw in my hands. I fired up my chainsaw and just started leveling stuff.
As the days passed and Masa's building project started to gear up, Rapid Richie, who had built dozens of cabins in the area, became more than just a landowner. He became Masa's mentor in all things construction.
As a first-time builder, I very much relied on Rich as my mentor to give me more or less step-by-step instructions. He'd tell me what I needed to do that day, and, well, I'd do it. So the first steps in building a cabin were, well, collecting the first materials. And since we were going with pole construction, we needed good, long, straight poles. And luckily, Rich and Lisa had beachcombed some great cedar poles the winter previously.
And they've got to be 16 feet long. And we want straight ones with no crack.
Brought them up to North Beach, dragged them up onto the building site, dug some holes, and stuck them in the ground, and that was the start. There it is, my first pole erected. I feel so proud. Only 8 more to go. Nothing like being up on a rickety ladder with a running chainsaw, doing probably pretty stupid things. Well, the chainsaw certainly scared me, and well, even the most experienced people told me it was wise to be scared of them. I was wearing chainsaw chaps, Kevlar chainsaw chaps. I guess I better YouTube this shit tonight and learn what I'm doing, because I'm not going to last very long keeping on like I'm doing. Coming up on a week and a half on island, finally got in what I can say are definitively all of the poles. So that's most of the heavy lifting, I'm hoping.
But the heavy lifting did not stop there, as next it was time to install the subfloor. Using large pieces of plywood, this involved chiseling and rounding corners with the chainsaw in order to fit them around the circular poles.
So today's a significant day in the building of the cabin. We're putting on I don't actually even know the technical term. Not the rafters. Well, the rafters come next. But whatever those things are that hold your rafters. Glad Rich isn't here. Oh, he's here now. Come here, Rich. What do you call these things that we're putting up that will hold the rafters? Okay, technical. Roof beams. So we're putting up the roof beams.
But once he learned the correct terminology, Masa realized that the poles were not squared to each other or well aligned. They were about 2 to 3 inches off from where they were supposed to sit, which meant that the roof beams and later the walls would not be joined together properly.
The benefits of using pole construction is that you can tie in all the outside members and get some real strength there. But since mine were inches, not quite feet, but definitely inches out of whack, nothing was going to line up like we thought they were.
Attaching the roof beams involved notching the top of the poles in order for the rafters to sit on top.
Do not do this at home.
It was a slow process since there was only one shot at getting it right, and Masa found this out the hard way.
Now playing that game where one side is just a whisker too short, so I get back up there with the chainsaw and take a little bit too much off, which means I'm trying to even out the other sides. It's kind of like, you know, when you're playing with your sideburns, and I take a little bit off here and then try and match it, and you end up looking like MC Hammer. So at the beginning, I had the ambition of building the cabin completely on my own. And so that started off with raising the poles. It was challenging. I think it's difficult to put round holes into a squared off floor plan at the best of times, but doing it by yourself even more so. And actually that led to the first set of major hurdles.
As predicted, the pole alignment problem came back to haunt Masa when it was time to put up the walls.
It's the day after that we realized that we made some fairly fundamental errors with putting up the poles. We should have plumbed the poles when we put them in. I should have. Now I'm really paying for it. We need to put in windows, but also want the insides of the inside walls to be plumbed as well. And can't really do both at the same time. This just seems like another, I don't know if inevitable is the way to put it, but that's what happens. We just gotta figure it out.
But the construction mistakes were not the only things bearing down on Masa's mind. Time was running out on his rental cabin, and the month of May was nearly over. He would have to figure out a plan B fast for putting up the walls, or he'd be forced to live in a tent very soon. He was also facing his first disagreement with his mentor Rich about how to proceed.
You would think, how could I possibly disagree with a man who's built a couple dozen cabins and has over 30 years of building experience? And I've built, well, nothing. But I guess I had that watershed moment of realizing that my mentor is not infallible and doesn't have all the answers ready at hand and is in fact human. So I've started thinking a little bit more for myself.
Masa and Rich came up with a hybrid plan they could both live with, which now included framing in the poles in order to be able to support the walls and windows.
We'll see how it goes, and if it doesn't, then I guess there's always the wrecking bar and can start again. But given the time crunch, it would be really nice to find something that works and then be able to replicate it for each of the segments. So I guess if you call between each of the poles a segment, we've got 10 of them. Certainly for a first-time builder who's going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. Ten more days till I need to move in. And as you can see behind me, there's no windows in yet, no sheathing, no insulation, no plastic. So a little ways to go yet. Feeling pretty damn low energy.
With Masa's mood down in the dumps, Rich and Lisa decided to help him out by organizing work parties, and the construction picked up some speed.
During the building process, I had a change in philosophy. Well, more I adopted philosophy that Rich had, which was never go back, always move forward. So there's no redoing of work. If something didn't get nailed in quite right, well, you played it as it lay and just kept on building.
A little higher.
But even with this change in work philosophy and extra hands, Masa's cabin didn't get completed by the deadline. He was forced to find another place to live.
I was really thinking that I'd be done in less time than we'd allotted. Rich had estimated 3 months, and I was thinking I'd just work a little harder and get it done in 2.5. So it was humbling. It was definitely humbling not to hit that mark. And I'd also sworn that I would not move into the cabin until it was absolutely done.
It's been a little over 3 months since Masa first arrived on Haida Gwaii with a plan to build his own cabin and live off the grid. But as a first-time builder, Masa's mistakes seem to really stack up in the early stages of construction. After failing at pole construction, Masa and his mentor, Rapid Richie, decided on a hybrid of pole construction and stick framing in order to support the cabin.
When I set out for the year, I'd regarded it as a year of learning, almost a year of being in school. We're kind of in uncharted territory now. So we could be on the leading edge or the bleeding edge. We'll soon find out, I guess, when the cabin is done and we have our first major storm.
What we're going to do is we're going to cut this up here and nail it in here so that the window sits straight. And the walls will look like this, won't look like this, and look like this. And the window won't look like this, and the window will look like this.
With time running out on the rental cabin, Masa received some much-needed good news from Rich and Lisa.
It's day 84. Considering that I was supposed to be moving in this week, that would have been a problem. But I've had a stay of execution. I no longer have to move out of where I am until the end of the month.
With an extra 3 weeks added to his building schedule, Masa continued plugging away at the cabin building, framing walls, windows, and doors.
I can't figure out whether building a cabin is a far bigger project than I imagined, or if I'm just making it a bigger project than it really is. It really seems to be never-ending. It's really difficult for me to imagine actually ever being done with this. I also found it quite a demoralizing blow to think that perhaps even when I'm done with the cabin or done building it, that it's not necessarily going to be structurally sound, and that every time the wind blows up during the winter, I'm going to be lying in bed wondering whether half the house is going to implode.
As Masa struggled with a mental break, he had to push all negative thoughts aside and continue with adding the plywood to the exterior walls. Suddenly, the cabin was starting to look like a home. But even with an extended deadline, Masa ran out of time and had to vacate the rental cabin, the Queen Pin. He expected to be moving into a tent with all of his high-tech gear. But instead, a friend offered him the use of his power shed.
That time was stressful. I mean, I really needed to move and I didn't have anything to move into. I actually had my first visitor come up and neither of us could live in the cabin. He stayed in someone else's cabin and I ended up living in Rescue Ross's power shed. He's the head of ambulance services and search and rescue here. And he offered up his power shed for me while I finished building. It's about 100 square feet. So well insulated that apparently it's warm just with body heat, but I can't let it take the pressure away, and I can't make this a year of living in Ambulance Ross's power shed. It's day 101, and as predicted, I'm sleeping in Rescue Ross's power shed, but the place is getting close, very close. Lisa plumbed in a sink, just waiting for the rainwater cistern to fill. Rich put in the propane stove and kitchen counters with plywood tops. And Lisa also laid down the floor, this beautiful 1x4 blonde wood.
Before moving up to Haida Gwaii, one of Masa's considerations was setting up a budget for the construction of the cabin. He will be sharing some of the building costs with Rich. Masa spent approximately $3,000 on gearing up costs, which included key pieces of equipment such as a generator and chainsaw. The most expensive asset in the building process is generally the land, and in this case, the cabin site was already owned by Rich.
Rich had estimated I could build this cabin for about $3,000, so I budgeted $4,000. If that sounds a bit low for a cabin, remember this is not to code. The regulations pretty much end at the end of the paved road. In sourcing the materials, I brought up as much as I could from off-island, really just nails and screws. But having said that, a 50-pound box cost me $85 in Vancouver. And even before I sailed across the strait in Prince Rupert, the same box was going for $185. Ideally, I would have brought windows as well. I could easily have spent my entire budget just on windows. But one thing Haida Gwaii does have is wood. So I'm buying my dimensional lumber straight from the mill. If I had the time, skill, and inclination, I could be milling my own wood, as many people do here, and splitting cedar shakes, which is something I plan on doing. But I could also accumulate building supplies, things that get free cycled, barter for particular pieces. But as they say, good, cheap, or fast, I need to be done relatively quickly. And being a first-time builder, maybe I'm not good, but I'm working carefully.
Living off-grid certainly saved Masa some cash. He used a generator for power instead of hooking up to the electrical power grid, which was about 2 kilometers down the road from the cabin site. In order to communicate with others, he used his laptop and iPhone tethered together for internet access. Since he didn't have any running water at the cabin site, he had to collect water for drinking, cooking, and bathing in large jugs from a pipe that came out of an embankment a few kilometers away. This way of living provided him with a simpler, more conscious outlook on life. Rich and Lisa have been living off-grid for many years, as do most of the 100 or so residents in Toe Hill.
It's a good way for somebody who wants to be able to get off the grid, to be able to live relatively cheaply or inexpensively and build your own house. Haida Gwaii is a great spot. It's still wild and pretty much untapped. And I think Masa's going to like it, and I have a feeling he's going to stay. I think he's going to really like it. He seems to be well adapted and well adjusted, and I think he's going to have a great future here.
With such encouraging words from his mentor, Masa returned to work on the cabin, but he encountered some unexpected visitors.
Traded in the helmet for a bug net. But these no-see-ums are just so, such hateful little bastards. When the wind dies, I'm working alone and the clouds of the no-see-ums kick up. Nasty little buggers about the size of a pen tip, but they leave a welt about twice their body size. That's the kind of time I get irritable, and the insidious thoughts creep into my head and circle around. Yeah, it should be clear that this bug situation, all these no-see-ums, completely not reflective of what goes on in any of the other buildings on this property. They all seem to be aggregating exactly right here. I'm kind of taking it personally. I'm wondering what's next. Maybe this is going to turn out to be a native burial site. Move in, hear voices, go away, go back to the grid.
Once the no-see-ums cleared out, Masa turned his attention to the outdoors as well.
I was reflecting on what a great chance this was to do a lot of things I never really expected I would have the chance to do. And if I'd been living my previous corporate life, I'd probably be in some climate-controlled building or another somewhere. If I was still on that track, I probably would have wanted to have reached a VP or director position. Although I guess technically I'm the principal of my own company, MTAC Initiatives, employee 1. And so I decided to be good to myself today because we just opened a sanitary engineering division. This being the site of my outhouse. Quite a nice spot, I think. Very peaceful. Plan to keep the door open so I can mull over the trees over there and think about the day ahead. And in celebration, I've also given myself a promotion. I've made myself director of digging really big holes. So I'm going to start in on this hole after I change my job position on LinkedIn.
The big day had finally arrived, and after 115 days on North Beach in Haida Gwaii, Masa Takei moved into his own rustic cabin.
The first night in the cabin was strangely anticlimactic. And as I lay back in my bed on my thermarest, I could see all the things that still need to be done. The building drive is being replaced by a foraging exploring drive.
With much still left to be accomplished, Masa took a well-deserved break to enjoy the summer activities in Haida Gwaii.
By the time the summer rolled around, I just started to get to know people better. I'd spent most of the spring just building, and I found, yes, the more I met people, the richer my experience became.
Summer is in full swing on Haida Gwaii. Although not yet fully completed, Masa has finally moved into his cabin. But lately, construction has taken a back seat, and he's turned his attentions to exploring and enjoying the true treasures of the island.
Summer on Haida Gwaii, the place comes alive with more visitors, people coming up. There's things to do. I got to know some good people there in the Toe Hill community. I feel like I actually made some really good friends there, people that I'd like to keep in contact with for, well, the rest of my life.
Chris the Mapper Ashurst has been living on Haida Gwaii with his wife Ellen for over 10 years. One of Masa's first friends on the island, Chris is the head of the local Coast Guard Auxiliary.
I certainly tapped into Chris's knowledge, Chrisopedia as we call him. He seems to know something about everything, whether it's, bird identification, him or Ellen would know, or how to do simple things like collect appropriate firewood. He was a good source for that. I got out onto North Beach with Chris the Mapper, or Chris the Ranger now. We suited up in our wetsuits and got out into the water with dip nets, one in mask and snorkel and the other wading the shallows, and just scooped up crabs. That's a sporting way to go. And so for dinner, late dinner was crab, with butter and garlic sauce, or dip, I should say.
Before going up to Haida Gwaii, Masa was a novice hunter, but he had purchased a hunting rifle for the trip since the hunting season is 9 months long on the island.
One thing that I really got into on Haida Gwaii was hunting. I didn't anticipate finding it so rewarding, and really it was a good excuse to explore the islands. I ended up in places that I probably would never had reason to go to, and tried all sorts of different modes of hunting too. Rich showed me hunting from the kayak, and I extended that on to hunting from my paddleboard. I saw a lot of great country in my time hunting out there. When my friend JC was up here, we spent some time at Rich and Lisa's cabin down south and went out with JC on morning and evening hunts. First time JC's ever been hunting, and it was really nice to go out with him. We got a 2-point buck, so the meat larder is full again.
Living off the land was one of Masa's goals when he set out for his year-long adventure. Masa took his cues from Rich on how to skin and prepare the deer. Once the deer was processed, the meat was preserved or frozen and oftentimes shared amongst the community. Another goal that Masa wanted to achieve was to take full advantage of the amazing surfing on the island. Masa's friend Randy, a local carpenter, came knocking one day, and Masa couldn't say no to his offer.
Hi, it's day 161. A couple days ago, I was out on the front porch sanding some beams, and Randy dropped by. Did a hard sell on making an overnight trip down to the west coast. There was apparently a forecast for 3.5-meter waves coming from due west. Well, I wasn't going to go. I needed to finish gear loft and a shower stall before my guests arrived. But he made some compelling arguments and also agreed to help me build the gear loft when we got back. And really, I'd been dying to get down to Reno for a paddle session before the summer ended, and this was my chance. The epic surf did not materialize, but we still got out for some half-decent waves, and really, it's hard to beat camping around a fire on your own private beach.
As Masa was slowly returning to building, he was also keen to check out what other locals in town had built as inspiration. Nate and Charlie have been living in Haida Gwaii for over 5 years, and what started out as a tiny cabin has now turned into a 3-bedroom dream home.
It started off as a small cabin, about 16 by 24. That was before I had met Charlie. And
I came along.
And it grew. We put another 20 by 20 addition onto the side of the foundation, and then another 20 by 20 off the other side eventually too. I went up 2 levels. So we just wanted to build something that we could, I guess, grow into a bit.
There's lots of people building in the community, so there's lots of resources. You're all building at the same time and going through the same things. So you keep asking them questions, and yeah, you help each other out.
I like the timber, big timber feel. We've kind of added timber elements, and we've exposed rafters and joists and stuff. So we wanted to try and bring as much of that feeling. These logs here we've tried to salvage as much wood as possible. These are out of the clear cuts down south from here a little ways.
If we use local materials where we can as well. If we can't beachcomb it, we'll try and buy locally, and yeah, it's all most of it's from the island. If I was to give anyone advice about building, I would say yes, keep it simple and within your knowledge, but also be creative and use different materials. But yeah,
leave some space to dream in there too.
During the summer months, Masa also hosted a fair share of visitors from back home. His friends enjoyed many of the outdoor activities Haida Gwaii had to offer, but also lent helping hands in the continued construction process.
A good number of people came to visit, and it was nice to have them in the slice of home sense, but also it was like being able to go on everyone's vacations with them. I got to spend more quality time with like a good number of my friends than I ever would have down here. It's day 168. I've had visitors all week this week, including my first female visitors. I was a little apprehensive, thinking that perhaps the cabin might have been a little bit too rustic for them. And also I wasn't sure if the same activities I'd done with my previous guests, guys, would be as interesting to them, especially with my first guest, Jessica, who's more of a city girl. But yeah, the first hurdle, the outhouse, passed muster. And I was pleased to find such mundane activities as chopping wood held some entertainment value, however fleeting.
I think I damaged the ground. You really split it? Am I that weak?
I like it.
It's gonna end with me missing a toe. I was only there for a few days, unfortunately. I didn't realize how spectacular it was, and it's sort of the kind of place you want to stay for a few weeks and really absorb it and get to know the people. But it was beautiful, and I think what struck me most was the way the people were with each other, like the community there. It was like you were welcome instantly. I think, what he sees in it, yeah.
The next day, Christy, one of Masa's oldest friends, joined them at the cabin, and they continued exploring the island. Crabbing, hiking in the woods, and hitting the gun range were all part of the daily activities.
I've been batching it in this cabin for the past 5 months or so, and could probably have used the positive female influence. Although we might have overshot the mark a little. The estrogen level was quite high around here. But Jessica left, and Christy's partner, Michael, flew in, and we achieved hormonal equilibrium again.
With Michael's help and determination, Masa returned to construction, although he did enjoy some downtime. With the arrival of the fall season, Masa had to turn his attention towards winterizing his cabin after most of his visitors had left the island. One way that many Toe Hill residents get through the long, dark nights of winter is by harnessing the power of the sun and the wind. Meredith is Masa's next-door neighbor, and she runs Spark Energy, a company dedicated to providing wind and solar power to many of the off-grid homes in Toe Hill.
So we actually erected the first wind turbine on North Beach, and since then my interest in renewable energy has grown. There is a great need, and we have an incredible amount of resources here, whether it's food, whether it's people, whether it's renewable resources for electricity. This place really seems limitless sometimes, and there's a lot of potential to create a really good example to the rest of the world for how it's possible to live really well and possible to, at the same time, live sustainably.
Meredith's situation gave me a whole respect for how important having a good community of people around you is. She's an integral part of that community, and she can call upon people's help at the drop of a hat. And that was one of the big revelations for me, how important community is. I think a lot of people's cabin in the woods fantasies revolve around being able to just do it on their own. And I found it to be just the opposite. It just magnifies the importance of the people you have around you and your relationship with them.
The importance of community became clearly evident around the holiday season. Masa spent Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's celebrations among new friends and gained a new appreciation for the holiday potlucks he attended.
It's day 288, the first week of the new year. I attended Christmas dinner hosted by Ross and Kelly and her family, and one of my geese made it onto the Christmas table. New Year's is a enjoyable, unstrained event here. You can show up, you don't have to wear a suit or a dress, wear your dirty Carhartts, and no one would even notice. You can indulge in interpretive dance, and no one will judge. Really good people.
The Haida Gwaii winter season is about 4 months of darkness, with the sun setting around 4 p.m. and rising around 9 a.m. Masa spent his time visiting friends, watching movies, attending games nights, and cold water surfing. But the winter season brought record-breaking temperatures to Haida Gwaii. Masa experienced one of the coldest winters in the past 40 years and faced a few challenges during this time.
This past week we had an Arctic outflow, which meant that temperatures dropped to about -16 by one neighbor's thermometer, which might not sound so bad to people in other parts of Canada, but there's something cold about the cold here. All the standing water froze, including what was in the rainwater cistern, so there was no water flowing to the cabin, nor any water flowing out as the drains also froze solid. So no washing up, and I ended up taking my dishes to someone else's cabin to wash in their warm water. But even people who were on the grid lost their water as well, as some of them had their pumps freeze, which turned it into an expensive week for a few. I guess that's one of the upsides of being low tech. My garden hoses seemed to survive the cold just fine, and when it finally did thaw at the end of the week, everything was working.
As winter turned to spring, Masa's year-long adventure on Haida Gwaii was coming to a close. He finally threw a cabin warming party and filled the small 320 square foot cabin to the brim with new friends, children, and dogs. In a few days, it would be time to return home to Vancouver. After a year living off-grid, Masa's about to find out if returning to the city is still what he wants in his life, or if his new friends and his cabin in the woods have changed his perspective for good. A full year has passed, and Masa Takei, a self-proclaimed urbanite, has finally completed his cabin in the woods. After numerous building challenges, insect infestations, and living with no electricity or running water for the year, Masa feels satisfied with what he has accomplished.
I went from being an urbanite to someone who can appreciate some of the finer points of what it is to live in a small community, living off the grid and off the land.
His time on Haida Gwaii certainly included taking in the sights and enjoying traditional experiences such as hunting, surfing, and hiking. Masa had big dreams and aspirations for the cabin build, and originally planned to construct a modern cabin right out of the pages of a high-end magazine.
As for how the cabin turned out, I guess you could describe it as rustic. Maybe a little more character than I had originally anticipated, but functional. People seem to enjoy staying in it.
Even though he doubted his talents as a builder, Masa certainly learned a thing or two about construction over the past year. However, the time had come for him to leave his temporary home and community, to return to his urban family and lifestyle. It's time for Masa to plug back into the grid and find out how this experience and the people he met along the way have changed him.
Coming back to Vancouver, flying back in, it took me 3 days to get up to Haida Gwaii by car and boat, so there was sort of a transition time, but if you're flying, you step onto a plane and less than 2 hours later you're back in Vancouver. I was surprised by how familiar it felt. I would have expected a greater shock. So after I landed, went to my parents' house and saw my mother for the first time in over a year. And it was, of course, fantastic. But it just reminded me of the fact that my parents are aging and the cost of being away.
As a doting mother, Mrs. Takei was originally surprised by Masa's intentions to move to Haida Gwaii, and she admits she didn't always think he could follow through with his plans.
I'm really surprised that he made this cabin by himself with help, and then he finished it, and I'm really pleased with that. And then he came the long way in his own unique way, which is really, really great for me. I am very proud of him, but I really miss my son. And then I look at his film all the time, and his pictures too.
After visiting his mother, Masa tried to adjust to the city again and wondered about whether or not he could still fit into its landscape.
I wouldn't say I missed the business of the city at all, no. That was a bit overwhelming, that sort of white noise you get in the city. There's certainly other things I missed about the city. Of course, the people, but, well, food. I'm really looking forward to indulging in all my food cravings.
To get his cravings fix, Masa met up with old friends and former co-workers for a sushi lunch.
How are you? Good to see you.
Sushi is one of Masa's favorite foods and was nearly unattainable in Haida Gwaii unless delivered by float plane.
We've met around sushi, which is something else that I'd missed, but I realized that the conversation overrode the sushi even, which says something for the conversation.
Okay, but let's get to the really hardcore stuff. Let's talk about your spiritual self.
Oh, well, we should have some sushi first before.
It makes one think about one's own self and the fact that I've been sitting here slogging away for a whole year. Well, you've been obviously producing a lot of hair and
if nothing
other
else,
experiences.
If nothing
You've got something to show for it. And like you say, I look the same. Perhaps
and,
older.
It's interesting to come back and, I mean, I've just been in town for a day now, but, you know, because we're kind of parallel paths, I guess. Well, you're significantly ahead of me on that parallel path, but
I'm not sure
it's
about
interesting to see, yeah, you know, I could picture what would it have been like if I was sitting outside there.
Yeah, yeah.
That would have been interesting.
And how do you feel about that? Is it a sigh of relief?
I can't say I'm heartbroken.
Hair would be shorter.
Hair would definitely be shorter, better conditioned.
After lunch, Masa received a surprise from his friends on Haida Gwaii. His Tohill friends wanted to make sure Masa had something to remember them by.
Hey guys, it's Masa here. Day. E360.
You know, I did a lot of hunting up here. I mean, let's face it, beer and deer. I've pretty much been living off that when people come over. But you know, I didn't just learn from people how to hunt and gather. I actually taught them a few things about hunting and gathering. I would like to think. I mean, no one has ever bicycle hunted up here before. No one's ever gone paddleboard hunting up here before. I mean, these are new things, new techniques for people to try.
There's a lot of things I mentioned on my blog, and one of the things, you know, because I'm a humble guy, and I think you guys have got that from me. You know, it's been a year of a lot of frustrations and a lot of guys up here, but I gotta say I'm pretty proud about something. I'm officially the #2 most eligible bachelor on North Beach, you know, but I'm on his ass, that Randy Martin guy, I'm gonna get there.
Well, Masa, it's been a year. You said you'd be here for a year and build a cabin. I bet you didn't know that you're gonna make some friends. I guess you hoped so, but you also thought that you might be able to hide in the shadows and simply document us like so many penguins on a rock or something. But alas, you couldn't hide from us in this small town, and we're glad you came. You showed us a few things about building, some very interesting things about hunting, and generally we're just like really glad to have you part of the community. Welcome.
I was super touched. Super touched. Maybe I got a little wasabi in my eye or something like that, but I think I teared up a little bit.
As Masa's first day in the city continued, the surprises kept on coming. His friends also organized a reunion party for him at a bar downtown.
I was extremely touched to have people come out in the middle of the week at short notice and welcome me back. It's a good reminder of the people that I miss here. I do realize that I missed a lot of things going on in people's lives, being away for the year, all the sort of important moments in people's lives, and just really not there. And proximity counts for something.
While Masa contemplates his decisions, his friends react to Masa's accomplishments over the past year.
I'm not surprised at all that he went up there and he built his own cabin and he's making his own food and living off the grid like that, because he's always been very good at anything he takes on.
I think when I first heard about it, in addition to being jealous and totally wanting to go up there and visit him, I was I mean, it's a pretty mind-blowing thing, right? Like, we live in cities, we kind of don't do this stuff. We're weekend warriors. We go out, hike out on the North Shore, and we maybe throw a tent up for a couple of hours, but that's it. He went away for a year and built a cabin with his bare hands, so it's pretty shocking and pretty inspiring and pretty awesome.
The night was also filled with many important points of conversation, most notably, Masa's hair.
Well, I keep saying he looks like David Suzuki meets the Hulk.
He looks like a caveman that has come back.
I think it looks good now. When we've been watching it on the videos, it's been it's going through those awkward stages and getting kind of funny, but I think it's reached a really good point. It's pretty impressive hair.
But one of the biggest questions for Masa's friends and followers of his project is how this year off-grid might change his life, and especially where he would choose to live once it ended. As Masa thanked his friends for coming out to welcome him home, he revealed an important decision he had made about Haida Gwaii.
But definitely come up because I'm going back up.
What? You're going back up? Is this the whole thing to get us here and tell us that? That is cool.
Did I do it?
You want to grow your hair longer?
How about bigger? Bigger, yeah.
Go big.
Absolutely. Density, mass, then velocity, next. Yeah. So that's it.
Are you going to live there forever?
No. Well, who knows? We'll see what happens. I can't really remember the exact time that I decided I would be going back, but after a certain point, it just became a given. It was probably, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of the way through that I realized I just had to come back, and just that first year was just a start.
You know, hearing him say tonight that he's going to go back up again, that actually speaks volumes. It means that it wasn't just a project that he wanted to do for a year and give it a shot. Something obviously resonated with him while he was up there, and you know, he has every intention of going back. So I think that's a pretty powerful statement.
Masa told me a few months ago that he was thinking about trying to make Masa a permanent part of his life. I think it's the most perfect thing for him. It didn't shock me for a second. I thought, of course you're going to stay there. Why wouldn't you? I think he's just found his home. I see like a sense of calm that's come over him, which is really, really lovely to see on him.
But what sealed Masa's decision to return to Haida Gwaii permanently was his need for a better life. A simpler life. The kind of life he couldn't find in a busy urban city.
I would say that there certainly is a much higher quality of life there on North Beach. I would almost say you can't even compare. I mean, I was living on the water with the freshest organic food possible, and the gratification of collecting it myself or bartering for it, the kind of human contact, being in proximity with a group of people, getting to know them very well. Just nothing I found in a city environment, in an urban environment, that's even comparable. There's certainly forms that I find gratifying when I'm living in the city, but having experienced how it can be, it's night and day, it's a different planet.
Through this year-long adventure, Masa experienced some philosophical shifts that he'll take with him for the rest of his life. He's discovered what makes him happy, and even though living off-grid has its challenges, this idyllic lifestyle is one that he hopes to pursue as his future unfolds.
I'm not sure if it was so much that I changed fundamentally, or if there was something inherently in me already that wanted to live this way, but it certainly feels natural. This is a test. This is only a test. Pretty damn close to the camera. I don't know, is that better?
Did I put in the part about when I drove the Coast Guard truck into the fire hydrant?
Bah.
So many squirrels.
Okay, ready? You rolling?
Unfortunately.
We got all that. Squirrel every day, really.
It's day 337, and you tired of listening to the chainsaw yet? I could cut a stage, a thing where I fall off the ladder with the chainsaw into the bushes, and I don't know, you know, spices it up for you. I'm sure you're getting bored out of your skull over there.